Good morning, Nashville. It's Friday, August 8th, and today is your Soapbox Session. We have an interview with Caleb Gamblin and Chase Smith, two members of the Nash Native Team, local real estate agents here in Nashville. It was a super fun conversation. This is from a few months ago, so there will be some data that is a little bit dated, but a lot of the principles and the things that they talk about in this conversation are still highly applicable to buyers and sellers in this market. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with that Nash Native Team. The number one question that I get most times when people are looking to purchase something, they're basically asking, in the market today in Nashville, is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market? It's typically a pendulum that swings all the time. So today, just some stats from Nashville that's coming from Redfin and the Greater Nashville Realtors. Redfin's showing that days on market's about 83 days on average. Sale to list is 97.6%. Homes sold above list is 13.6%, which I thought was interesting, and price drops is at 23%. The Greater Nashville Realtors is showing February inventory is about 11,000, which is 4 months of inventory, and days on market is about 57. So what are your thoughts initially on the market today? Do you feel like it's a buyer's market, seller's market? And what does that mean for buyers?
I'm a little shocked by the 23% price drops. Kind of thought that would have been higher. I'm under the impression that it is a seller's market the majority of the time, even in today, if the seller is priced right. I think they hold all the cards and they can... I mean, because of that, like, what was it, 13% that is sold over list, those are people that are marketing their property the correct way. And if a seller's willing to do that, then it's a seller's market. But you'll speak more to the buy side.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's relative to the market, you're in. But, I mean, in my experience with buyers, I mean, you are able to negotiate in a pretty strong way. Unless it is a competitive situation, which right now is it's becoming, you're seeing a little bit more of that getting into the spring, like we've run into it a couple times. But again, it all comes back to if you're priced correctly.
But even in the multiple offer situations that we've run into recently, the buyer was still able to negotiate, concessions, inspections, appraisal. I mean, they're able to be protected and get things that they need to feel like they've secured a win.
Yeah.
So when you say it's typically a seller's market, what do you mean by that? What does that mean for somebody listening?
In my mind, and I think coming from the world that I did where I was predominantly listing heavy at the start, it's always a seller's market if they do the right things. If they put a product out there that people want at a price that people can afford and that makes sense for that product, they hold all the cards. That's my theory behind it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with that. I do think for the last... little bit here. It'll be interesting to see how things kind of with rates creeping down a little bit and see how that affects things. But I do think for the last bit, buyers and sellers have just been really far apart, and neither's been willing to kind of concede to the other. Like, sellers might think their home is worth X amount and it probably isn't.
Yeah.
And then buyers think that maybe, they can get more than realistically they can. And so being able to put deals together has been a little more difficult because you have to have both people, both people want to feel like they're winning. And so I think that's why you've seen prices hold up too a lot and people come in and low ball and it's just maybe too far off.
And I think one way to put it is the seller's always going to have leverage if they do, the correct things, if they price it right and they put it out there and market it well. But today you are seeing the ones that are not, the buyer then absorbs all that leverage. And I think that's what we've been able to see the last really 12 to 16 months.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, if you hang on the market for a while, I mean, people kind of smell the blood in the water and then,
and it really doesn't matter what you do at that point. I mean, if you start hitting, 180 days on market, regardless of how many price drops you go through, you're getting negotiated. Just because that's the market that the buyers are in. They're used to that. They feel like they have that leverage right now on those properties that have been sitting.
Yeah. So in my experience right now, I have a lot of clients who are pre-approved and they want to move forward on a house, but they're struggling with staying on the sidelines. They're just not pulling the trigger at this point. Do you feel like Nashville has a inventory problem, or do you think it's an affordability problem?
I think maybe, I mean, I think everybody has a little bit of an issue with affordability right now, like just across the board, because you got used to those really low rates and then things changed. And then I think, we saw massive appreciation in the market, massive price jumps, in home values. So that's some of it. But
yeah, I would say, I think a lot of people are relating back to COVID, where there was a ton of pressure, not just from you were able to get money cheap, there was a ton of inventory, there were people moving for reasons that were outside of the norm. And now we've gotten to a little bit more of a stable market, where it's a more consistent flow of real estate, and so buyers aren't feeling that pressure. But I do think the biggest holdup right now is when they're sitting around talking to a buddy, a friend, family member that bought 2-3 years ago, when they say, oh, I'm locked in at this rate, or I got this house and this is my payment. Well, that payment looks 30% higher to them right now. And so I think that's the holdup, is it's an affordability problem, but they're getting pre-approved. So we know they can afford it, but it's just the kind of like the sticker shock of what it actually is costing them to pay for that home each month.
Repeat that question again, because I was going somewhere with what I was saying, and then I just lost my train of thought. But
yeah, I mean, I feel like, if somebody's sitting on the sidelines, there's basically two reasons why. There's either not the inventory on the market that they want, or they can't afford it. So is it an inventory issue or an affordability issue?
Yeah, and I think there's another layer of that. I think there's a little bit of disconnect with buyers on what your money is getting you in terms of product sometimes. Mm-hmm. I think that's as big of an issue as anything. As I think, and you don't really see it like on homes. It's more in I think some situations the new construction world, where you've seen a lot of those big price drops because people bought at the height of the market. It's hard to be an infill builder and make money, I think, in Nashville right now. Yeah. I think Caleb can definitely, he comes from that world a little and knows a little bit more than I do. But that's where you've seen a lot of the big price drops, just because people are, it's a numbers game. And but I do think, and this kind of goes back to things hanging around and things moving if they're priced correctly, is if you're priced correctly, things are going to move. If you're not, they're probably going to sit. But things that are priced well and make sense for buyers, those things are still moving very fast. Mm-hmm. So, I think just sometimes when people go, man, I'm going to be paying, $4,500. I'm renting at this price, but I'm getting pre-approved, and for this product, I'm going to be paying $4,500 a month, and it's not, maybe the rental's a better situation, or they're getting more for that money in terms of how they're living. That's a tough sell at that point.
Yeah, I think that's one big thing to note is that rental prices have come down. Now, I believe I just saw a stat where for like the first time in so many months they went up in February. But for a long time it was cheaper to go buy, during 20 and 2021. Now it's cheaper to rent, and people aren't getting what they expect in a home
for their money.
Yeah, so it's like, why am I going to go? And they feel like they're overpaying. Mm-hmm. So why am I overpaying each month for something that is not exactly what I want, when I can continue to rent and rates are going to come down and it'll be affordable?
And what's your answer to that question?
Well, the answer to that question is it's always better to own and get in the game. I mean,
I think another thing is you're never going to check all your boxes when you're looking for a home.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, now some of that's contingent on what price point you're looking at. We're talking probably more to first-time buyers or second-time buyers. Like, there's always going to be something that even people who go build their own homes typically call you 5 years down the road and go, I don't like what I did, that don't have budgets necessarily. But I think part of helping first-time buyers understand is like, hey, you're buying a first home. It's probably going to have, we're going to be able to get 95% of what you are imagining. But there's probably something that you're going to have to, bend on in some way. Like, you may not get the garage and the yard. You may not get, there are some cosmetic things you need to update. And if you're looking for that perfect thing, there's just, in that price point, there's always something. So,
I had this conversation recently with one of my friends who's looking to purchase something, and they have a really strong budget. They're coming in from New York. They have a large down payment, and they want to get something really nice. And they started looking at houses around $1 million to 1.1, and they got a lot of that sticker shock of, wow, this monthly payment is way higher than what I want. It's even higher than my rent in New York. And my initial conversation with them was, let's take a step back here for a second. You don't need to buy a $1 million house for your first purchase. What you should probably do is purchase something that's a little bit cheaper, maybe a little bit too small for your family, that where you're going to be in 2 to 3 years. But you need to look at it as an initial investment rather than, I need exactly what I want for the next 10 years of my life.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that personally. I mean, my wife and I, we bought a house 2 years ago. I would have liked to have been there for a little longer. We have a 1-year-old now. The house is getting smaller. I mean, life is going to constantly continue to change. And you can try to, I'm not, and if you're in a position to buy the 10-year house and it is perfect and what you want, then great. But, that doesn't happen all the time. And I tell people this when I have a client I'm working with right now. We were having a conversation yesterday about they're buying their first home. And I just said, and they have plans maybe in the next 5, maybe they're not here in 5 years or but is the answer to rent for 5 years? It probably isn't. I think if you're going to be here for the foreseeable future, you need to get in the game. And I mean, I think this is a market that's still probably in its 3rd inning of development overall. I think it's hard for people who've been here a long time to understand that. But Oracle, there's an article that came out yesterday that they just bought another $60 million of real estate on the East Bank. I mean, things are happening all the time. But to that point, I always tell people, make sure whatever you're buying, you're not buying so much in the future that you're, in some situations, maybe it's like you're buying a much larger home that you can grow into, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done, or it's maybe not where you want to be exactly, location wise, And I think, if life does change, and it inevitably does, and you call me in 3 years and you've hated living in that location, or that house, hasn't lived the way you've wanted to, and you could have maybe made a better decision for where you were, you might feel a bit like you might have some regret around that. But if you buy something that, does check your boxes and is something you're going to really enjoy living in, even if you sold it and you just broke even 3 years down the road, you're not going to look back on that purchase and probably go, that was a mistake. So I think everybody gets caught up in the what's my ROI going to be on this, and that's not really, it's something to keep in mind when you're purchasing, but it shouldn't be the main driver. I think you need to enjoy what you're living in. I put a big amount of weight on convenience and just lifestyle and all that. Now everybody's different, but that's what I'd say to somebody, in that position. And it's something I said to somebody yesterday, who's a dear friend.
And I think out-of-state buyers are really the hardest to relay that information to, because one, they don't have a great understanding of the city as far as locations and areas that they want to live in, but they also don't understand or really have an understanding of what their day-to-day is going to look like. Even they may know the area of town that they're working in, but as we know, you can be 5 miles from somewhere and it take you 10 minutes, or you can be 5 miles from another and it take you 30.
Or you may not have a grocery store near you, or just little things.
Yeah, so getting them not to jump the gun as much on a home as it is their life that they're building is one of the hardest things to kind of direct them towards.
Can you think of any success stories of clients that you've seen purchase something that's maybe where they're at in life right now rather than where they're going to be at in 5 years, that then was able to sell and continue to upgrade the homes as they continue to grow?
Yeah, I mean, I know of a client that purchased a home in South Nashville that was a really well done, cute kind of 2-bed, 1-bath, cottage style home. Her life changed pretty quickly, but it ultimately ended up in a part of town that's seeing a lot of growth. She's had a ton of appreciation through it. She was able to put a long-term renter in there, which then was able to set her up to get qualified for a short-term rental. So she's kind of taken that first purchase of this starter home and really dominoed that into cash flowing through the long-term rental, and then also investing into the short-term market here.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of examples of that. And a lot of them are happening. It's funny, like kind of like right now, because I got into, Caleb and I both got into real estate. I mean, I was in the music industry prior to getting my license in 2020. We kind of joined,
Both hit it at the same time.
Yeah,
So we're now
so
starting
we're
to
kind of
see
seeing
those.
that, we're kind of in that first round, I would say, of clients that we helped purchase, in our first year or two that are now listing their home with us and, upgrading to maybe like the next step in life per se. And obviously a lot of those clients who purchased at that time, are pretty happy, selling even now, where some people aren't so happy in some situations selling right now, depending on when they purchase. But, that's some of that's just the market and how it's moved. But they're seeing some great return on their investment. They're able to go level up in whatever the way that looks like for them, so, did that answer the question?
Yeah.
I can't even
Yeah. I was going to say, there's one thing that I think that is a little bit slept on or kind of ignored, and it's the fact that you always have the ability to re-underwrite where you're at. So, like, when you purchase a home, you don't need to know what you're going to do with it for the next 5 to 10 years because you don't know what the market is going to do. We have no idea where interest rates are going to go. We have no idea what home appreciation is going to happen. You can't be afraid to purchase something and then 3 to 4 years from now reanalyze where the market is and what makes sense with the asset that you hold. But if you don't hold the asset, you don't get to make that decision because you're not in the market.
Correct.
But if you're in the market, you can look at something and say, does it make more sense to long-term rent or short-term rent? Does it make more sense to sell and purchase another house? Does it make more sense to take a HELOC out and use that cash to purchase a new home? You can't be afraid to not know that answer right now because there's so many variables that are going to go into it.
And it's going to constantly change.
And it's
the
gonna
answer may
constantly
look different one year, like, year to year. There's a client right now, there's a lot of times right now I'm walking into maybe a listing presentation or consultation and that, we're giving them information that might even change their mind at that time, to make, well, maybe it is better to rent for a while, and get a renter in here. Cause you're gonna, you may not be making bank, but you're gonna make a little money each month and let's just see how the market, goes over the next 6 months and then let's reevaluate.
But without holding the asset, you can't make that decision.
Correct.
You just can't. You cannot be afraid to have faith in future Michael. That's what I tell myself all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, future
You've done
Michael,
a great job of that.
Like future Michael is going to be able to get it figured out. Like have a little bit of faith in that human being who's going to be there in 3 or 4 years, that they're going to be smart enough to be like, okay, here are my options. Let's see what makes sense. Whereas if you don't hold the asset already, you don't get those options.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of it's like goes back to the question of like, waiting on the sidelines or getting in the game. Like if you're not in the game, you can't do it. There's no way to build wealth through real estate or you don't even have the opportunity. So,
well, and I think Nashville is a great market to test yourself in. I mean, historically, it's proven to be pretty strong. There's tons of areas that are still seeing growth. So if you believe in yourself, why not do it in Nashville?
mm-hmm. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I believe.
So the next thing, the other question that I get all the time is where I think mortgage rates are going to go.
Why don't you tell us?
Yes, we get that all the time too.
So, and it's usually centered around, Michael, do you think it's a better time to wait to purchase something, or should I purchase something now? And so I did an exercise with Onward Real Estate at one of their meetings, and it's basically a 2x2 decision grid. So if you, like when you look at probability, you do a decision grid. So there's 2 variables that go into what the market is going to do. You basically have how interest rates are going to move and how home prices are going to move. So your home prices are on your x-axis and your interest rate is on your y-axis, and you have a 2x2 grid. So there's basically only 2 things that could happen. Interest rates are either going to go up or they're going to go down. And home prices are either going to go up or going to go down. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the probabilities, in any 10-year stretch in Nashville, prices have not gone down. They might have gone down in a 1-year stretch, but if you look at it over holistically, a 4-year, you see about a 4% appreciation per year. So if you look at it just probability, there's probably a 90% chance that prices go up and 10% chance prices go down. And then you have probably a 50-50 that rates are going to go up or rates are going to go down in the short term. The reason I say that is because we have no idea what's going to happen with these tariffs and how it's going to impact inflation in the short term. And we're talking like probably 6-8 months. The Fed came out yesterday and announced that they were going to do 3 rate cuts this year, which would drop interest rates about 0.5%. So the Fed thinks that rates are going to be in the low 6% range. So if you look at the probability, you got 50-50 and 90-10 for home prices going up. So the most likely situations are that interest rates go up and home prices go up. So if you purchase something right now, you're locked in, you don't worry about interest rate variability, and you're going to get appreciation. So it makes more sense to buy now than it does to buy later. The equally likely situation is that rates go down and home prices go up, which is what most people think is going to happen. If you purchase now, not only do you get the appreciation of home prices going up, but you can also refinance in the future and get the lower rate on the market.
Well, and on top of that, I mean, I'm in 90% of my deals, and this is really at any price point where somebody's still getting a loan, if it's not a cash buyer, I can pretty much guarantee you that I can get you $15,000 to $30,000 off the bat in seller concessions for a 2-1 buy. I mean, it's just, if it's not competitive and that home has been there sitting on the market for 14, 20, 30 days and they don't have anything else coming in, like you can pretty much, I can pretty much guarantee you that. And if rates do come down and prices do come up and maybe the market picks up a little bit in terms of like more buyers hop in the game, you're going to have less leverage to go. So that's another piece that you would potentially lose if you don't, hop into the game sooner rather than later.
And I'm talking to buyers now that, to kind of put this into perspective, or past clients that bought in, 23, late 22, when we were starting to see that shift in the market, rates were coming up. There was a lot of panic in the market, and these clients still bought in when rates were anywhere from 5 to 6%. Now their 2-1s are coming up at the end of their term, so they're going back to that initial interest rate that they locked in for year 3. They're already below.
It's still probably lower.
Yeah, they're still 0.5%, even up to 3/4 lower than where rates are at right now. So I just think waiting historically has not proven to be the right move in real estate.
It's I think I would kind of it's so hard to time. Like, I think people who wait are trying to time something perfectly, and that's just pure luck. If you do, in my opinion. I mean, you might have a little bit of a educated guess you can throw at it, but most of the people who hit it perfect didn't necessarily mean to hit it perfect. So
you can't hit it. I do this every single day, and it's impossible to hit it perfect. Here's a great example. In 2022, interest rates started going up. They were at probably around 3.5 to 4% in 2022, and then we started seeing it drastically increase. There was a period of time when there was a Fed meeting. There was one single Fed meeting, and in a single day, the bond market increased 150 basis points, which is equivalent to like 0.75% in interest rates. So you either could lock in the day before, and the next day interest rates were 0.75% higher. You would have had to know that it was coming, have a negotiation already happen with the seller, and lock the interest rate in all in one day, which is completely irrational.
Yeah. Well, it's irrational to buy something just to buy something based on that too.
Right.
Like, if you're, purchasing a home, like, people ask, like, is it a good, probably the same question you're getting asked, is it a good time to buy? Is it a bad time to buy? I always answer that with like, well, it's the right time to buy if it's the right time for you to buy, because it is largely relative to that person and their situation. People buy and sell real estate, unless you're just strictly like an investor, that's a different angle. But if you're purchasing something as a primary home, like, you're purchasing because there's something happening in your life, whether it's financial or family or, there's all these different career. Yeah. I mean, there's all these different reasons. And I would say it's the right time to buy when it's the right time for you to buy. And I, things happening in the market. Yes, there are better times to buy. If you wanted to look at it on paper, and maybe historically worse times to buy. But at the end of the day, it is incredibly relative to you.
Well, and I think people today who are considering buying need to understand that we're talking about moving from where interest rates at, like 6.68, I think is what.
Yeah,
last
6.6 to 6.7 right now.
Okay, from there to maybe 6.4, 6.3. Like the movement in interest rates over the next 6 months is not going to be drastic enough to really change anything one way or the other. So if you are, if a buyer says, hey, I think I want to buy, but would it be better to wait 6 months? No, it's not. If you're like, well, I may want to buy in the next year and a half, that's a different story. Mm-hmm. But if you're within 12 months of wanting to buy, you really need to go ahead with it. Because another thing is, very rarely, if we sit down with somebody, it's not a 2-week process to get them a home. It is a 30 to 60 day process before they're getting really even under contract. So,
and sometimes a year-long process. It just depends on the person.
So the movement there, I mean, we're already up against the wall there because we don't know what it's going to be when we actually lock in. So the best thing to do is go ahead, get approved, start the process.
Yeah, and there's a lot of education too that comes with that. So I mean, you need to depending on if the person has a good sense of Nashville or areas. I mean, there's a lot of education that goes into that, and there's a lot of education that goes into what's available in the market for that buyer at that time. Because I might tell you one thing one month that's maybe no longer there the next. Like, I mean, things can change, quickly sometimes. But I understand your point that if somebody's looking to buy in the next 6 months, it's not going to change enough to materially change what they're looking at on a purchase.
And to put real numbers to what you're saying is interest rates are at 6.7 right now. If they drop to 6.25, that's 0.5%. It looks great on paper. I always tell clients, you don't frame your interest rate in your living room. No. It's not on your mantle. Nobody gives a shit.
Well, what would that be? I mean, because I people ask that question a lot, and I'm like, man, and I try and give them, hypothetical, when you're dealing with, I mean, that's probably going to drop your payment.
You're probably talking between $75 and $100
exactly.
a month.
Yeah, I would say typically
So the real math there is you can wait a year and save yourself $1,200 in payments. Yeah. But what is the offset? Because the offset will likely be 4% appreciation, which is going to be well above $1,200.
Yeah. Yeah, $500,000 home, that's $20,000.
Well, and then you just factor in. I mean, these are the things we can't control. But if the market does pick up, I mean, you might be losing way more than that. I mean, there's a potential for that. And then you can always play devil's advocate and say, what if the market, But historically speaking, I mean, I think I tell people all the time when they ask those questions too, all right, let's take out some sort of, macroeconomic event that it's going to affect the entire country. But if you look at Nashville just as Nashville and what's going on here, do you think over the next 5 years, if you're planning to buy a house now, and I tell people too, it's hey, it would be, if you're buying right now, it would be great if you can be in this home for a minimum of 3, but preferably 5 years, just because you're right with the new administration and tariffs and all this. I mean, I think that there's a lot of question marks, but I don't really have a sense that you're going to get hurt in Nashville if you're holding on to whatever you're purchasing for at least that amount of time. Now, if you call me next year and say I got to sell, and some people, like I said, life changes, things happen, and you just cross that bridge if that's what happens. But I wouldn't purchase and plan to call me in less than 2 years, because that leaves you maybe a little more exposed than if you kind of ride out a longer time period. And then I just have them use their own reasoning to be yeah, there are a lot of new restaurants coming here and a lot of whatever it is for them. But the city's growth and what the businesses that continue to move here, the people that continue to move here from places like California, Chicago, New York. I mean, that flow, I have not seen that flow really turn off. And now we're getting into something completely different. But
I don't even remember.
I was just saying, I haven't seen that flow turn off of
Yeah.
people coming here and that growth. So
that's the market we have today. That's all the time we have. We're all wrapped up. So.
wow, time flies when you're
yeah.
having. Can we come back?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you
Yeah.
guys for sitting down. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
the Nashville real estate market.